after 2 years, good to have a Tree of Remembrance ceremony. So I want to welcome you. This is the 26th annual Tree of Remembrance ceremony. My name is Robert Hayes, and I'm the president of the Linn County Victim Impact Panel. A lot of you don't know this, but I am retiring this year, effective October 1 of 2023, so this will be my last Tree of Remembrance. That does not mean I will not continue to come and support and share everyone's love and remembering of our loved ones. As most of you know, I have a passion for taking an impaired driver off the road. Unfortunately, we cannot detect them all, and others, like you, have become victims of this senseless tragedy. Where are we at with the fight against impaired drivers on our roads? In 2017, there was reported 416 fatalities, and 160 of those were killed by an impaired driver. In 2020, there were 408 fatalities. However, 221 of those were killed by an impaired driver. These statistics were only alcohol-related fatalities. It did not include drug drivers. This is frustrating to hear, but we have not given up, and we'll still battle to bring these numbers down. This can be done by enforcement, education, and holding those who offend accountable for their poor decision making. But the reason we are here tonight is to remember. Remembered our loved ones as we read their names and see their line on the tree. I would like to invite Chaplain Dean Aithwaite of the Willamette Valley First Responders Chaplains to come up and give the invitation.
If you would like to join me in the giving invitation, please bow your heads. Heavenly Father, as we come together this day to remember our loved ones lost, as we share stories and memories, and encourage one another as we struggle on this path of grief, we thank you for the gift of our loved ones. As we may still wrestle with why, which prevents our wounds from fully healing, we ask for your help, your divine intervention. Bring healing to our hearts and minds, restore peace. May you continue to comfort us, as your word says, you are comforter to all. And may we be open to your comforting. Please repair the relationships that were broken the moment tragedy and devastation arrived in our homes. And thank you for each person here this evening, for their courage to continue each day, for their willingness to share their vulnerabilities, for their determination to make a difference and draw awareness of the pain that comes from impaired driving. And as we continue to journey through grief, I ask that you keep the beautiful memories of our loved ones alive in our minds and hearts all our days, so our loved ones will forever stay with us as a bright ray of sunshine. In your holy name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Chaplain Dean. I'd like to introduce our first speaker for tonight, Linn County Commissioner Sherry Springer. In 1985, Commissioner Sherry Springer became an Albany Police Department Explorer. And in 1986, she then became a reserve with our agency. From 1987 to 1995, she was a deputy in Grant and Benton counties while working for the Sheriff's Office. She was a canine handler, worked for Marine Patrol, flew on planes looking for marijuana grows, which is lots of fun, and a hostage negotiator on the SWAT team. Commissioner Springer was a state representative, House District 17 from 2008 to 2021, and served a total of 7 terms. She was on the caucus leadership team and the vice chair for the Judiciary Committee. She became Linn County Commissioner in January of 2021. Most importantly, she is a wife, mom, and a grandma to the 2 best boys in the world. But as a grandpa of 3, I'm going to debate that one. Please join me in welcoming Commissioner Springer.
Welcome, and thank you for having me here. This is important, and this is a special time, and I feel privileged and honored that my husband and I can be with you tonight to share this time and to share a few thoughts. So as it was said, I was in the legislature for 2 years and was on the Judiciary Committee, where especially for the people that were either attorneys or just really got into looking at the law. And I was one of those nerds that got into looking at the law, and most of impaired driving laws went through that committee. And there were a lot of them, believe it or not. We think that we have a set of laws and they've been fairly unchanged, and that's not always the case. It isn't. And during that time, I heard hours and hours of testimony. And I was reflecting back about that the last couple days, and I started thinking about these comments tonight, and I thought, what in the world do I have to offer? I don't know that I have anything to offer. And I started thinking about the narrative that we hear now, what we hear on social media, how people talk, and it's like, you know, it's got to feel really, it's got to be really easy to feel forgotten as a victim or a survivor of a crime. And I want to assure you, in spite of how it may appear, there are still so many of us who believe the needs of victims and their families should remain the main focus. And I think that's an important point for us tonight. And when I was in the legislature and served on that committee, as I said, we heard hours of testimony and hours from victims, and unfortunately, hours from the survivors and the family, the loved ones. And as I stand here tonight and think about it, it is only the faces of the victims that came before us that I have in my mind. And I can remember, and that was not because offenders never came. Offenders often did. I don't remember them. I remember the faces of the victims. I remember the moms. I remember the dads. I remember the two little girls. I remember those people. And I remember their faces and what they said. And I have to ask myself, why do I remember? It's because their testimony impacted me. It changed how I think about things. It changed how I share my experiences with others, certainly those in the legislature, certainly those of years of driving around in a patrol car and putting people in jail and being at many accidents at the hands of impaired drivers. And so as I share that with others, and it has impacted me, I hope that it impacts others. And I know, as hard as it is, and as fair as it is unfair as it is, when you share your stories, so much more powerful than anything I can share. When you share your stories, you not only remember and celebrate your loved one, the person you cared for, the person you have deep memories with, but you also change people's behavior and how they think. And that changed behavior can make all the difference in a decision that could change somebody's forever. And I respect and I honor and I acknowledge how hard it must be to share those stories sometimes. I implore you, share them. Because not only does that keep those that we've lost alive and vibrant in our hearts, but it does impact other people. And we never know what our words, how our words and what our words cause as far as an impact in others, and it could be life-changing for some. I thank you for being here tonight. I thank you for allowing me to share this time with you tonight, and know that as we enter this wonderful Christmas season that my husband and I love so much, it's not without pause and time that we stop and we pray for those, our own losses in our family and others. And I honor you and thank you tonight for being brave and being here with us and sharing your stories.
capital regarding impaired driving, any impairing substances, and the support for law enforcement. And these bills that were put forward that Sherry supported went above and beyond. Thank you, Sherry. I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Chief Marcia Harnden. Chief Marcia Harnden was hired by the Bellevue Police Department in 1993 after graduating from the University of Oregon, Washington. Oops. University of Washington, where she has a Bachelor of Arts in History and Speech Communication. She also has a master's degree in Applied Leadership from the City University. She was served in a variety of operational and support assignments ranging from patrol, school resource officers, investigation, drug recognition expert, public information officer. She was promoted to lieutenant in 2010 and was assigned to the traffic unit's investigation team and managed 6 accident reconstruction investigators. In 2015, she was promoted to captain and returned to patrol, where she supervised 6 patrol squads, field training, and canine. In October of 2016, Captain Harnden took over command of the Special Operations Group, which includes the human trafficking vice detectives, narcotics investigation, serial criminal intervention, and a joint terrorism task force detectives. In 2018, she retired from the Bellevue Police Department. In 2019, she joined the Albany Police Department as our Chief of Police. Chief Harnden is a veteran DUI investigator and a drug recognition expert. She is passionate about traffic safety and DUI enforcement, and is all about keeping our roads safe. Please help me in introducing Chief Marshal Harnden.
I'll remind everybody we beat both of those interviews. We're gonna hijack the agenda for a few minutes for Deputy Hayner. He has a few things to say, and then I'll jump in there.
Good evening. My name is Carl Lang. I am taking over in January as the chair, the president of the Linn County Victim Impact Panel, filling in for Robert. And Chief Harnden graciously gave me some time to speak tonight in front of her speech. And I did some research on what to say to an individual like Robert Hayes. How do you acknowledge their retirement? How do you acknowledge the work they put in for the 30 years he's been in law enforcement? And so I did some research. I'm on the Linn County Sheriff's Office peer support team. One of the classes I've gone to is you should ask for help. If you're struggling, ask for help. So I did some research and I asked for help. I reached out to David Beatty, the traffic safety training coordinator. I said, what do we do for Robert Hayes, someone who's done this kind of work for the community? And we had some ideas. He shared some thoughts with me, and he said this, don't let your fear prevent you from growing. You need to share something. I reached out to Dina Ryerson, traffic safety resource prosecutor for the Department of Justice. And I shared some ideas, and she shared some thoughts with me. And then she said this to me. Dina Ryerson said about Robert Hayes, he appreciates stories from people who are personally impacted by his work in law enforcement. So I did some research about his training hours. He has over 4,300 training hours logged, training he's received in the Oregon Police Academy. He's given 7,500 hours of training to police officers. He's trained me in several classes. I was one of my instructors at the field training and the class to begin teaching other police officers how to do impaired driving enforcement, how to do those classes. And every time I teach with him, I learn something. Several years ago, I made a DUI arrest on Highway 20. I was driving west near Paradise. I was doing about 60 miles an hour, trying to get to the jail to get this guy in the Toxlizer. And a car passes me. And then the car passes the truck in front of me. So if I'm doing 60, he's really moving. And I thought, I gotta have an all-way police officer catch this guy. But this was years ago. I was still new. And I know from that little bit of time I had in law enforcement, cops don't like doing DUI investigations. They're difficult, they're a lot of work, and our credibility is challenged on the stand by defense attorneys for these investigations. And I thought, I'm gonna ask an Albany officer to take over my DUI, and I already have a DUI in the back of my car. I'm just gonna pull him over. So I did. Robert Hayes is the one who responded years ago. He was so happy to take someone else's DUI. He wanted to have a DUI that I started. And I thought, that's amazing. This is the kind of officer I need to model myself after. I need to look for and be aggressive and be interested in taking investigations that are difficult. A story that Robert often shares at the academy is what started his passion for DUI. I've heard this story many times, I won't tell it as well as he has, it's his personal story, but when he started in law enforcement in Marion County's Reserve, he handled a crash. And the involved individuals, two-car crash, the surviving individual was impaired, caused the crash. The other car, unfortunately, had a small child in it, a young girl who was a ballerina coming back from a recital. And Robert was assigned as a reserve to stay on that scene and remain with the mother, the surviving occupant of that vehicle. And Robert tells the story to the new recruits, and he says, the mother asked me, how could you even stop this crash? It's an amazing motivation to do law enforcement. And teaching with Robert has, when I feel down, I feel like, what does law enforcement offer to the community that the community can't offer for themselves? It's that right there, it's that motivation, it's that desire to do the work. I place Robert Hayes in a rare group. I received training from now retired OSP Trooper Ken Snook, which many police officers know. Ontario Police Chief, former trooper, Michael Ely. And add to that group, I would add, Lieutenant Robert Hayes. Thank you.
So Robert and I met well before I started here. Cody was taller than me, so I'm gonna stand up front, if that's okay. Story of my life. Robert and I met well before my career in Albany started. As he said, he said in my bio, I was a drug recognition expert in the state of Washington. And I've handled a number of fairly significant crashes. Did a lot of teaching, much like Robert did. And so our connection goes way, way back. And last year, actually earlier this year, I had the opportunity to go over to Bend and witness some awesome awards being handed out because everybody knows the impact that Robert has had. There is probably not a law enforcement officer in the state of Oregon or at other conferences across the country that have been not been in the profession 10 years or longer that don't know who Robert Hayes is. Anybody who's had DUI training has probably seen Robert speak. He's very passionate about it. We share that same passion. Some of the awards that he's received. In 2001, he was a Drug Recognition Expert of the Year for our municipality. 2005, he was an Impaired Driving Trainer of the Year. 2005, he was the City of Albany Police Officer of the Year. 2006, Security Alarm Corporation Public Service Award. And 2008, the MAD Award of Appreciation. 2013, the Ken Snook DRE Award for Excellence. And then he received basically a Lifetime Achievement Award from the UII conference in Bend earlier this year. So that's the impact that Robert Hayes has had on this profession. And like I said earlier, we share that same passion. I come to you, and Robert and I often talk about it. I have been on the victim side of not one, not two, but 3 DUI crashes in my life. First, I was 11. My mother was an alcoholic and drunk and hit a pickup truck head-on in California. Back then, they dusted everybody off. I had a pretty significant head laceration, a broken collarbone. I got treatment, got sent home, nothing ever really happened. So that's how far the laws have changed, and it's through legislation and victims pushing to make some change. My mom never saw a day in jail, never saw it inside a courtroom, and that was in 1979. I became a police officer, and this is very much a passion of mine from the very beginning. I went into traffic as a supervisor, oversaw more DUI task forces than I care to remember. Went home at 4 o'clock in the morning after dealing with drunk person after drunk person, all that went to jail. And then also be called out on too many fatalities in my career. One of those fatalities is a drug recognition expert, and Robert and I talked about this. My very first call out for a fatal crash involving drugs, where I was a drug recognition expert, was the death of Jose Barber, a brand new rookie officer in the Seattle Police Department. And he was hit at 85 miles an hour by a woman high on marijuana and cocaine, and killed instantly. And I was the investigator for the DUI portion of that. That woman got 10 years in jail. Last August, she overdosed and died from fentanyl. And so 10 years for snapping out a life. And we still have lots of work to do in legislation. And that's my commitment. It still remains my passion. And what we can do as the years to get there, for sure. So I tell oftentimes, I don't teach DUI, SFSTs or anything like that anymore. But one of the things I often tell people, especially police officers, because as Deputy Yang said, it's a lot of work to take that person in jail. There's a lot of money in the defense side of it to try to get that person off. And so they make us work harder and harder and harder. But the minute that we make that arrest, the minute that we take that person off the street, we have saved a life that night. We don't know a name or a face, but we remain passionate about doing DUI enforcement and making sure that people cannot kill loved ones in a way that they have affected your lives. So just like Commissioner Springer said, I'm honored to be able to speak in front of you. I honor what you have been through, and you have a commitment as the chief of police, all being able to do everything we can to make sure that our roadways are safe in memory of the people on this list. Thank you, Robert.
At this time, I'd like to introduce Leslie Straka and Catherine Brunhaven, who will be performing Air on the G-String by J.S. Bach. Immediately following the speech, Sergeant Logan Denny, Deputy District Attorney Michael Paul, and Deputy Carl Eng will read the names of the loved ones who have been injured or killed by an impaired driver due to harms that have been placed on the tree.
Darlene Aldinger, David Aldinger, Emily Alves Hufford, Jewel O. Anderson, Amy Balderas, Stormy Barge, Melissa Beckman, Kimberly Ball, Leslie Beresford, Susan Bleskins, Nancy Ann Bokich, Todd Boone, Charlotte Boyce, William J. Brady, Wade Brown, Frank Brownell, Mary Brownell, Martin L. Burby, Shannon Michelle Center, Phyllis Clark, Donna Cole, Brad Connors, Carlene Marlowe Connor, Michael Dirth, Amy Deo, Rochelle L. Duncan, Jonathan Michael Elliott, Amanda Faybill, Andrew Faybill, Steve Finnegan, Bernice Foley, Graham Frazier, Chance Friedhoff, Marie Frisco Connor, Forrest Graham, Kelly Gronley, Felicia Hamilton, Brandon L. Hart, Norman Hassick, Sandra Hassick, Brian Hood, Brian Hudson, Kippy Hudson, Jim Heyer.
Andrew James, Rustin James Johnston, Ronald Jones, Paul Arnie Caro, Paul Keith, Natasha J. Kukla, Brian LeBlue, Nick Larson, Mark Lastly, George Edgar Laswell, Janet Maxine Long Molinix, James Luke, Rosalind Macy, Tiffany Macy, Amy Masto, Zachary Manning, Kirsten Marble, Bradley J. Martin, Jessica Marie Martinez, Timothy Martushev, Colleen McDonald, Mike McHenry, Allery Mead, Monty Moreno, Dennis Neighbor, Kyle Neighbor, Robert Navarro, Jessica Neffendorf, Mike Olson, Lindsay Marie Olson, Daniel Oliver O'Neill, Kirsten Oquist Ellis, Ava Ochoa, Barbara Ann Peterson, Anne Marie Perez, Joshua Perkins, Don Prickle, Stephen Patrick Priestley, Emma Polito, Russell Putman, Robert Brandis, Lawrence Raimundo, James Reynolds, Michael Rice, Victoria Sophia Richards.
Mesa Ridley, John Riley, Brandon Rockwell, Gabrielle Ruiz Lopez, Amanda Salmon, Cindy Lynn Sandrock, Caleb Frank Simonis, Keely Ann Simonis, Shelby Rose Simonis, Carla Smith, Michael Span, Lori L. Spinney, Krister Stark, Mark Stofler, Joni Stover, Angela Svensson, Stacy Swafford, Caitlin Terra, Bill Thayer, Caleb M. Thornton, Zachary Triplett, Laura Marie Vasquez, Angie Wallace, David West, Joe Williamson, Richard Alton Wilson, Samuel Wilson, Susan Louise Wilson, Lauren Wright, Roy Wright, Jim Young, Katie Zollner.
I'd like to thank Rita Wyatt for making the ornaments that were placed on the tree. We encourage you to take these ornaments. I know many of you who come here year after year and take them and build a special tree with the ornaments on it at home, which is great. Also thank you to Rita and Wyatt and Bonnie Timberlake and Amy Gouer, who also decorated the tree. I'd also like to recognize the members of the Linn County Victim Impact Panel. Deputy District Attorney Michael Paul, of the Linn County District Attorney's Office, Amy Gouer, Executive Assistant with the Linn County District Attorney's Office, Sergeant Logan Denny with the Oregon State Police, Ashley Scott, Executive Assistant with the Philomath Fire Department, and Rich Bryan, who is our coordinator for our monthly panels. I would also like to recognize and thank Roxy and Patty. They're here today. Where's your hands? Show me your hand. They're right there. They speak at our panels every month and talk about their stories and their tragedies. So if that's something you're interested, feel free to ask them some questions after the ceremony, because we don't want people to reoffend. We want to save lives and we want to educate. Thank you to Leslie and Catherine for being here and playing for us. They are with the Eugene Symphony. Several years ago, we had a wrong way driver on Interstate 5 who killed members of our Eugene Symphony and injured them, and we're honored that you can come and play for us and for them. I'd also like to thank Chief Marshal Harnden and Linn County Commissioner Sherry Springer for taking time out of their busy schedules to come and speak with us this evening. In closing, I would like you to leave you with these thoughts. I'm trying to think how to close this off, because this is remembering, but it's also grief, and it's also pain, and it's also how do we move on. And unfortunately, in my family, we had a traumatic event a year and a half ago. So I was thinking, how can I close this? So instead of speaking off the cuff, I wrote this down. Losing a loved one is very painful and difficult for anyone to endure. When we lose a loved one, there are so many different emotions confronting us. These emotions can run the gamut of the human feelings. Why did this happen? I should have said this or done that. How will I survive on my own? Through facing and embracing the pain of loss, we can see more quickly the light at the end of the tunnel. We eventually learn that the light does shine through the darkness, and we will find peace again someday. But not facing the pain of loss directly, we place ourselves in an artificial place, trying to protect ourselves and survive day to day. I do not think there are shortcuts to avoid or to minimize the pain we feel when we lose a loved one, but it is part of the healing process. As most of us have come to realize, grief is an emotional and physical reaction you have when you cope with the impact of a loss. Even though it might feel overwhelming and awful, grief is a normal, healthy part of the healing process after experiencing a loss. The grief process is often characterized as work because it is laborious and difficult. There is no timetable for grieving, and everyone will manage their loss of a loved one differently. Loss forces survivors, like yourselves, to readjust their lives in order to compensate and cope. It is particularly difficult during the holiday season. Embrace the memories you have. Laugh, cry, or even get angry. Losing a loved one is a shattering event that can affect you emotionally, physically, and spiritually. There is an expectation sometimes that accepting the death of a loved one means letting go of them and their memory. The reality is that many people continue to have a relationship with their loved one for the rest of their lives through remembering them. Death ends life, but it does not necessarily end a relationship. You may like to talk about your loved one in general conversation, or commemorate special events like their birthday or today at this tree of remembrance. Keeping your relationship with a loved one that has passed away is a healthy, normal response. On the other hand, you may choose to keep your memories to yourself and grieve privately, and that can be healthy and normal too. The bottom line is we will never let go, and we will remember them forever. Please know that my and the Linn County Victim Impact Panel members' thoughts and prayers are with you and your families over these holiday seasons. It's been an honor to serve on the Victim Impact Panel for the last 20 years and as the president for the last 15 years. I've truly enjoyed meeting you, not enjoyed the circumstances of how we met, but that we continue to get together every year to remember our loved ones. This concludes the 26th Annual Tree of Remembrance Ceremony. Safe and happy holidays to you and your safe families. Good night and be well.